Good day, my name is Therese, and I'm going to be reading to you now the fourth installment of the book Dialogues with the Devil by Taylor Caldwell, and we'll be discussing what we are learning as we go along reading this book and the teachings that come from the Akashic reading of the conversations between Michael, Archangel Michael, and the fallen Archangel Lucifer. We're going to begin now with a letter from Lucifer. Greetings to my brother Michael, who believes that in much repetition there are new revelations. Your last letter to me seems addressed more to your new worlds, with which God has endowed you, rather than to me, who knows heaven as well as you. And perhaps much more, for was I not created before you? And it's true that in the heaven world, Lucifer was the hierarch of Archangel Michael and the 7 archangels before his fall. True, there are no absolutes in heaven, save for our Father, who is all absolutes. Therein I find a tediousness and paradox of paradoxes. There is a strange similarity between heaven and hell, change that is not really change, though you would disagree. Each morning my damned say, "This is another day," but they discover that it is the same as the day before. In heaven there is no time. Surely that is a greater weariness. My damned do not attain, for there is nothing to attain. Your holy souls do not attain, for total attainment is not possible. The soul strains, whether in heaven or hell. If there is a singular difference, I have yet to discern it. You would speak of the joy in the beatific vision, and do I not know it? I saw it first, my dear brother. But if even archangels are not to know its supreme secrets, wherein lies the satisfaction? The pride of being the insider with the insider information. To know that one can never know all appears to me at times to be hell itself. At least my damned know all there is to know of hell and my nature. There are no hidden corners, and if there are no fresh delights, there are no fresh mysteries and no terrors, however sublime. This condition has always seemed the most desirable among men, and have I not given it to them? Now, as we read these words, we need to think about where it is in our psychology that we resist striving and become disgruntled and complain about another day and another day and another day. And we need to forsake that and move back into that childlike joy that wakes up each morning to see the sun rise and to hear the birds singing and to wonder what will be today's adventure as I hold the hand of God. And even if that adventure is the reaping of a negative karma, we will do so knowing that God is there to strengthen us, and that everything that comes to us, even when it appears negative, is for that transmutation through the love fire of our hearts. And so we welcome it in the name of God and through that flame of God. There is an answer for every question in hell. My demons are solicitous. No soul asks without a reply. If the reply is mundane and possesses no novelty, did not man wish that for himself during the time of his mortal life? Nothing affrights these miserable wretches more than a hint that a strangeness is about to appear, yet they bewail, after a space, the sameness of hell. On all their worlds they struggle for the very condition they find in my hells. No disturbing variety, no uncertainty, no danger, no test of courage, no challenge, and no enigmas. They consider this the most marvelous of existences. Once assured of it in hell, however, they are agonized. I have always said that human souls were pusillanimous and blind and contradictory. Certainly in hell there is no free will, for the damned relinquished it on their worlds. This torment has been denied them by me. Therefore they cannot will to climb to heaven by self-denial, by contemplation, by worship, by dedication, by acts of faith and charity. These attributes shriveled in them during their lives, or were rejected scornfully by them in moods of risible sophistications. They can desire to possess them now, but I would keep them safe and warm, as our Father never kept them so. So they can will nothing. They can only accept the pleasures and the pains I bestow on them. In heaven, however, free will is fully released. The ability to reject, to deny, remains with archangels, angels, and the souls of the saved. The gift of repudiation is still with them, and the possibility of disobedience. Is that not most frightful? What insecurity, what danger! What he's saying here is that with free will in the heaven world, there is always the will to reaffirm God consciousness or to turn away from God, which is what created that rebellion in the first place. And the fall, the subsequent fall, where that devil was cast out into the land and into the sea, as the book of Revelation says, into the earth plane and the astral plane. And so every angel, every archangel, every soul in heaven loves God out of free will, not out of obligation. This is so important to understand. It's the true nature of love. It is why God created his creation, for that figure-8 flow of love through the obedience of the Son, who is one with the Father in all of his creation. My damned remain with me in eternal slavery, because in life they desired only safety and lacked the fire of adventure, though God knows they protested enough on their worlds. But what did they protest? Inequality, which is the variety of God, meaning also the different outplayings of the laws of karma. Instability, which is the light of the universes. Uneasiness of mind, which is the soul of philosophy. Apparent injustices, which are the goad of the spirit. Vulnerability to life and other men, which is a charge to become invulnerable through faith in God. The presence of suffering or misfortune, but these are a call for the soul to put on armor and serenity. They demanded of their rulers that they remain in constant cocoons, silky and guarded by earthly authority. They did not ask for wings to soar into the sunlight and the ominous threats of full existence. They rejected freedom for hell. Certainly they cried for freedom on their worlds, but it was freedom only to live happily, without the freedom to be divinely happy. I have satisfied all these lusts of men. Strange is it not that my hells, though the ultimate success of the dreams of men, are filled with weeping? And strange is it not that they still do not believe in the existence of God? But then they never did. They only believed in me. They cannot will to believe in God. They see absolute reality about them now, which was their will in life. I will not pretend that I do not understand them, for was it not I who promised them all without work and without striving? But lately I asked of a newly descended soul which had much acclaim on Terra, what was your greatest desire on your world, you who were applauded by rulers and admired by your fellow men? He replied, justice for all, and put on a very righteous expression. That was admirable, for who does not admire justice, even I? But I probed him. He declared that in his earthly view all men deserved what all other men possessed, whether worthy or not. They are men, so they are equal. And being born, they have a right to the fruits of the world, no matter the condition of their birth or the content of their minds or their capacities. I conducted him through the pleasures of my hell, and he was delighted that no soul was lesser in riches than another, and that every soul had access to my banquets and my palaces. No soul was distinguishable from another. None possessed what another did not possess. Every desire was immediately gratified, he discovered. He smiled about him joyfully. He said, "Here justice is attained." Then he saw that no face was joyful, however mean or lofty its features. He remarked wonderingly on the listlessness of my damned, how they strolled emptily through thoroughfares filled with music, and through streets wherein there was not a single humble habitation. He heard the cries of pleasure over my laden tables, and then heard them silenced, for there was no need now for food, and when there is no need, there is no desire and no enjoyment. He saw that the poorest on earth were clothed in magnificence and jewels, yet they wept the loudest. He was no fool, he said, "Satiety." "True," I answered him, "but satiety can live only in the presence of total equality." He pondered on this while I led him to the seat of thousands of philosophers, and he sat down among them. But as there is no challenge in hell and no mystery, there can be no philosophy. That night he came to me on his knees and begged for death. I struck him with my foot and said, "O man, this was the hell you made, and this was the desire of your heart. So eat, drink, and be merry." He attempted to hang himself in the matter of Judas, and I laughed at his futility. I meditated that above all futility is the climate of hell. He said to me in tears, "Then, if you are, then God exists." "That does not follow," I replied to him. "But did you not deny him on Terra? Did you not speak of Superman and man becoming, and the ultimate glorification of man on earth without God?" "I did not see God among men," he said, wringing his hands. "You did not look," I said. "You were too dull in your human arrogance and too enamored of humanity. You never denounced your fellows for their lusts and their cruelties. You told them they were only victims. You refused to look upon their nature, for you denied the infinite variety and capacities of nature. To you, one man was as good as any other man, and equally endowed, for the foolish reason that he had been born. You saw no saints and no sinners. It was only a matter of environment, though the proof was all about you that environment is a mere shading or tint on the soul and is not destiny. You denied that men have gifts of the Spirit, often above those of other men. In truth, you denigrated those gifts of striving and wonder. You denied free will. Everything evil that happened to a man was only the result of his fellow man's lack of justice. You denied the reality of good and evil, the ability to make a choice. In short, you denied life itself. "Then God in truth does exist?" he asked after a moment's miserable thought. "That you will never know," I said. "But rejoice, all your dreams are fulfilled here. Delight yourself. Behold, there are beautiful female demons here, and banquets and sports and pleasures and soft beds and lovely scenes, and all whom you had wished in life you had known. Converse with them." "There is no desire in me," he said. "I want nothing." "You are surely in hell," I replied, and I left him weeping. God pursues them even in hell, or does he, my beloved Michael? Grief is the gift of God, but he will not have my damned, for they have no will to rise to him, or do they? This thought arouses my anger. I have my domain uniquely mine. I will not permit him here, though once he came. I must discuss that with you another time. What he's talking about here is how Jesus, in that time between the crucifixion and the resurrection, that time that we celebrate as Holy Saturday, went down into hell and preached to the rebellious spirits in hell. Lucifer says, "But let us speak of your new worlds, which you mentioned in your last letter. Pandara, among the dozen about the enormous and fiery blue sun, interests me. Our father struck 6 women and 6 men from the jeweled dust and gave them the sacrament of marriage. I must congratulate God, for these creatures are fairer than many others. Their flesh resembles rosy alabaster, and their hair is bright and sparkling, and their eyes are green and full of light. They will have eternal youth if they do not fall. They frolic and work in the warm and turquoise radiance, where there are no seasons, because Pandora moves upright in her long, slow orbit around her parent sun. There will be no fierceness of storm or calamities of nature unless these creatures fall. There will be joyous labor and eager participation in life, and life without end in the forests full of red and purple and golden flowers. And about the lucent rivers and the mother-of-pearl lakes, there will be cities of song and learning. There will be adventures and delight. I have seen the red peaks of mountains, and the dawns like benedictions, and the sunsets like heaven itself. There is no disease here, no hunger, no sorrow, no pain, no death. There is knowledge of God, and God moves among them, and they feel his presence and his love. Alas, God has also endowed them with free will. That is my opportunity. The women and the men are as young as life. I can bring them age and evil and disease and death and violence and hatred and lusts. 6 women and 6 men. What shall I do? Shall I introduce a 7th man, my Damon, who seduced so many on other worlds and on miserable Terra, where he seduced Eve and Helen of Troy and millions of other women? He is a beautiful angel, full of gaiety and subtlety and delectabilities. His conversations are absorbing and delicious. His inventions of the flesh are luscious and charming. His concupiscences are sweeter than any fruit. His concupiscences are sweeter than any fruit. Few women have ever rejected him. His very touch, his smile is beguiling. All he is, all that is male. How can any woman resist him? If introduced on Pandora, the woman will reflect that he is far more beautiful than their husbands, and that he does not toil in the fields, and that his discourses are wondrous and mysterious, and that he hints of joys they have never experienced before. Sad, is it not, that even our Father stands at bay before a woman? Who can know the intricacies of a female heart and its secret imaginings? Damon knows those intricacies and winds them about his fingers like silver or darksome threads. He can persuade almost any woman into adultery. It needs but Damon to destroy Pandora. Or perhaps I will send Lilith, my favorite female demon, to the men of Pandora, that beautiful planet. She seduced Adam and Pericles and Alexander and Julius Caesar and so many rulers on Terra now. Who is so lovely as Lilith? Once she graced the courts of heaven, and all looked on her beauty with awe. She has 1,000 astounding forms, and each one more gorgeous than another. She is never oppressive, never demanding. She is yielding and soft and attentive. She follows, she never leads. When she speaks, her voice is like celestial music. Each attitude resembles a statue of sublime glory. She says to men, "How wondrous you are, how unique, how intellectual, how far above me in understanding." She is femininity itself, easily conquered, easily overcome by flattery, easily induced to surrender. She has only to beckon, and men rush to her with cries of lust and desire. Damon or Lilith? Strange to remark, men are less susceptible to determined seduction than women. Damon can offer women mysteries and endless amusement, and what woman can spurn mystery or amusement? They love the secret dark places, the moon, the whispered hotness, the promise of uniqueness and adoration. Women do not crave power, they are not objective. Truth to them is relative. Is this evil or good? Women in their minds can create a confusion, and this on so many worlds they have bequeathed to their sons. A woman can resolve all things in her mind and make so many splendid compromises. If the women of Pandora look upon Damon, there will be rivalries for his smiles and attention. The lonely male they will yearn to take to their breasts when their husbands are absent. There is a certain doggedness in husbands, which women find full of ennui. On the other hand, there is Lilith, who is always ambiguous and never captured. Men seek after the uncaptured, the unattainable, which, alas, is the climate of heaven. Lilith is always pursued but never caught. What man can resist Lilith, who never argues, never complains, is always complacent, and always fresh and dainty? Her conversation never demands that a man ponder or question. Men, I have discovered, detest women who pose challenges of the mind and the soul. They are engrossed in the flesh to the deepest extent. Therefore, they are simple, however their pretensions to intellect. They dislike women who ask why. They turn from women with serious faces and furrowed brows. They wish only to play, to gratify themselves in moments of leisure. They find their wives always at hand, and women's conversation is usually concerned with children and the dull affairs of daily living. The women say, "How are the crops or the cattle? How is our present treasure?" But Lilith says, "Let us frolic and rejoice in the sun and weave garlands of roses and drink wine and laugh and discover comedies. Above all, let us embrace each other." This is the exact opposite of the conversation of wives and is so irresistible. 2. Women are sedulous in the seeking of God, which is the other side of their nature. Men can endure just so much of God and just so much discussion of Him. After that, they seek love and physical activity, or their little philosophies, or sleep. Men love slumber, though women resist it. Man reasons, woman conjectures. Therefore, man wearies first. He is always yawning in the very midst of feminine discourse. Considering this, I believe Damon will be the most potent in Pandora, as he was in the majority of worlds. Women do not fall lightly. Eve gave much thought before she ate of the forbidden tree. Adam was merely vaguely aware of it, and as it was forbidden, he usually ignored it. Men are slaves to law. Damon adores the struggle in the female spirit, for while seductible it thinks of God. Lilith often complains that men are so easily the victims of their flesh, so there is no serious enticement, no arduous pursuit. In concupiscence, men never think of God at all. I shall send Damon the beautiful, the most alluring of male demons. If I seem contradictory concerning the nature of humanity, sweet Michael, it does not follow that I am inconsistent. I have written that men are less susceptible than women to seduction, but that is on the score of sensibility. A woman cannot be seduced by raw sensuality. Her mind and spirit must be engaged also, and she must be convinced that in some fashion the purity of love is involved. She must feel the wings of her soul expand, so that all is well lost for love itself. It takes on itself in her mind the aspect of the eternal, the immutable. So women are an excitement to Damon. But the purely female, like Lilith, cannot be resisted by men who see nothing eternal in marital love, nothing sanctified, however the words they repeated by rote. A woman is just an encounter to a man. She can be successfully resisted only if she is intelligent, and only if she asks questions, and only if she demands that the situation be permanent. Woman must be seduced through her most delicate emotions. Man alone can be seduced if no spiritual emotions are present at all. Damon was forced to converse with Eve to the point of exhaustion before she ate of the fruit which was forbidden. Had Lilith approached Adam, the deliciousness of the fruit would have needed only to be described. I made an error there, or was it the will of God? How He eternally intrudes. Yes, my choice will be Damon. He will be elegant to the women of Pandora. He will not openly seduce. He will treat them as equals, yet not so equal that it diminishes his masculine power. He will declare that their souls and their minds entrance him, and above all women, they are the most ravishing. He will talk poetry with them hour after hour. He will never be bored as husbands are bored. He will indicate the beauties of their world, and will strike attitudes, but not effeminate ones. He will tenderly entwine flowers in their bright hair. He will kiss their hands and show his muscles at the same time. If they leap with enjoyment, he will leap higher. He will pursue and offer them ardent embraces. He will discuss their natural problems with them, with manly indulgence. If they become pettish in the way of women, he will seize them in his strong arms and quiet their mouths with his own. At the last, as if tired of play, he will lift them up and run with them to some silent glade and forcibly take them, ignoring their hypocritical cries and their beating hands. Above all, he will pretend that they themselves seduced him with their beauty and reduced him to distraction. What woman can believe that she is without allurement, either of the body or the mind? I am sad for you, Michael, my brother. Pandora is already lost. I am sending Damon tonight to the women of your beautiful planet. I will reserve Lilith for later, when the race is fallen. She will convince men that lust is more delightful than reason, and feminine charms more to be desired than sanctity or duty. The flesh, she will say, has its imperative, but where is the imperative of the soul, if it exists at all? The flesh is tangible and lovely. Who would forego it for the transports of the spirit? The man who would do that, she will inform her victims, is no man at all, and is not potent. In short, he is a eunuch. What man does not believe that with a perceptive woman he will forever be virile, despite age or change? Lilith will introduce man to perversions and to atrocities. She will guide him into cruelties which women can never imagine. She will cloud his mind. She will darken his soul against God, while he basks in her arms. I anticipate Pandora and her sister worlds, for they are now inhabited with a new race, fairer and more intelligent than Terra, among others. Terra in particular has always had a certain and sickening mediocrity of intellectual climate, now stimulated by those who designate themselves as, quote, intellectuals. Terra dutifully conforms to what her race calls nonconformity. Rare has been the man in her history who was truly individual, and those men were either murdered for their purity of soul or, in despair at the race, became its glorious assassins. In general, the history of Terra has been stupid if frightful, predictable if dreadful. The souls of Terra which descend to me give even hell disagreeable moments, for they are ciphers. Yet on the other hand, they form a special torment to those souls from other worlds who are more intellectually endowed, and it is very amusing. The men from other worlds have, even in hell, attempted to lift up the intelligence of the men of Terra, to no avail, but to much comedy for my demons. There have been desperate but fruitless classes in the sciences and the arts for the men of Terra, and they have always failed, and there have been cries, "These souls are not truly human, they are impermeable." True, but I always discourage such outcries with the formula of democracy. This ritualistic word silences the souls of other worlds, if it tortures them, for was it not their own invention? My dear brother, in the golden twilight of Pandora I visited your magnificent planet. There I discovered you in a great purple garden conversing with our Father, and your voice was full of laughter and gaiety and innocent abandon, for you were rejoicing in the beauty of where you found yourself, and were exchanging jests with him. The gaiety of heaven I found it disturbing at times, for is existence not always serious and earnest and engaged with larger matters? I did not see our Father, but he saw me. I felt his majestic presence, and I covered my face with my wings, but still I knew his penetrating eyes, and how can I bear them, so full of reproach and sorrow? It is not my fault. He does not understand, and alas, it is possible that he never will. He did not speak to me, but he spoke to you, and I heard your voices and your mirth. The green dolphins of the seas appear to be amusing you. I have had another thought. When Pandora has fallen, I will send one of my favorite demons to her, whose name is Triviality. You know him well. You have seen him in the activity on thousands of planets, and he is more deadly than Damien and Lilith combined. I will write of him another time. But first, Damien and Lilith will have your Pandora and her sister planets. I must not be censored. Men do these things to themselves, and not I. I entice. I indulge men's deepest desires, but I can move only in an atmosphere of free will which God created. Will he save Pandora also? Your brother, Lucifer. And so Michael replies, Greetings to my brother Lucifer, who, as the great archangel he is, gives courteous warnings of his dire intentions. We are excessively pleased that you have informed us that you will send Damien to Pandora to seduce her 6 women. I remember Damien well, an angel of mischief and wit and jests. Alas, heaven is the poorer for the absence of that gay spirit. So we have taken precautions against Damien and Lilith. Unfortunately, we had to introduce suspicion into that vast paradise. We should have preferred that entire innocence prevail, but one remembers that our Father set in the midst of Eden a forbidden tree. Suspicion entering into Pandora will awaken the power of free will and a healthy mistrust. Therefore I appeared to the wives of Pandora, the innocent treasures, and informed them that they were with child, which pleased them mightily. However, I mourned they and their unborn children were in deadly danger. A beautiful female demon, one Lilith, who destroyed the souls of millions upon millions of other men, would soon enter the azure light of their planet to seduce their husbands, and lead their husbands into unspeakable pleasures and lust, thus ensuring that for a time at least those husbands would forget their wives and abandon their little nestings. The husbands would romp with Lilith, neglectful of the duties of hearth, home, and bed and field, and they would love her with madness and be so smitten of her charms that they would regard their wives with distaste and possibly revulsion. Worse still, the harvest would be neglected, the cattle unfed, the roofs unsealed, and whereof would wives and children then eat, and how would they sleep, unprotected from the rains and the winds? A woman may forgive her husband a romp in the shadowy forest, but she will not forgive him the sufferings of her children. Nor will she forgive the great insult to her own beauty and desirability. The ladies said to me, Is this Lilith fairer than I? And I replied, Assuredly, she is the fairest of women. For all she is a demon, and not maddening women demons. Though you are lovely to behold, my little ones, Lilith in contrast will cast a dust of ugliness upon you in your husband's eyes, but above all she will shatter the peace and joy of your planet and bring age upon your faces and wrinkles and dim the green fire of your eyes, and she will bring death upon your children and disease and storms and darkness and furies. What then shall we do to preserve our planet, our homes, our youth, and our life, and our children? The ladies implored me. I told them, men are susceptible to ladies of no virtue and no matronly attributes. They are like adorable children, wanton at heart, but in need of protection and the careful supervision of alerted wives. They will stretch forth their hands for the flying hair of a woman of no sturdy consequence, and they will dance with her in the moonlight, and garland her head with flowers, and press their cheeks against her breast, and drink of wine deeply with her. She will laugh and sing and play, and a wise matron understands how these things can lure men from their duties. She will becloud the minds of your husbands so that they will think of pleasure and not the granaries, laughter in the sun and not of weak roofs, roses in the glades and not of wool to be sheared. There is a certain weakness in men that inclines them to frivolity and dallying, and Lilith will exploit that weakness and entice your husbands from your sides. She will, if you slacken your watchfulness for a moment and do not regard your husbands with some severity. We will be watchful, O Lord Michael, the wives promised me. And there was an ominous green fire in their eyes, which I momentarily regretted, thinking of their husbands. If life will be slightly less pleasant and agreeable hereafter for the men of Pandora, and a little more restricted and scentless, and if their ways are watched by their wives and their restlessness suppressed at once, and if their gambols and songs are more scrutinized than before, is this not better than death and sin and age and disease and sorrow? Not to mention the harsh tongues of betrayed wives. I have observed that men can endure great hardships and adversities with considerable calm, but they cannot endure for long the smite of a woman's less affectionate remarks and her acid conversation at midnight when they would prefer to sleep. You have been merciful in your hells, at least, Lucifer, for women are not encouraged to be as stringent there, nor righteously abusive. I then repaired to the husbands of Pandora, and when they had risen from their knees at my consent, I said to them, Glorious is your planet, beloved sons of God, my dear brothers, and fair are her skies, and rich are her fields, and splendid will be your cities. Handsome are your faces, and strong are the rosy muscles of your arms, and your wives rejoice in you. It is so, Lord, they cried in jubilation, and I smiled at the happiness in their eyes, and loved them dearly, for the male spirit is a little less complicated than the female, and somewhat more naive. It has an innocence, even in paradise, beyond the innocence of women who, even in paradise, are given to reflection and are less trusting. But alas, I said to the boys, your joy is threatened, for you have free will, as you know, and alas again, so do your wives. They have it even more, and that is one of the mysteries of the Almighty, before whom we shade our faces in awe. Men are often slave to habit, virtuous or unvirtuous. But women have few habits at all, and so are easily led astray into novelties. Your wives, though with child, will not always be with child. They will have moments of leisure, while leisure for a man is a quiet resting, or an innocent pastime, or running after balls, or a climbing of trees for the fruit, or just sleeping. Leisure for a woman is the veriest temptation. She has a seeking mind, and what she seeks out is not always immaculate. 2. She is usually enamored of herself and searches for compliments. Have you not already discovered this for yourselves? They considered, then wrinkled their pure brows. It is true, one of them said. And I was sorry that I had recalled his wife to him, but it was necessary, as you will doubtless agree. My wife often sits by a limpid pool and admires her countenance, and then looks far off and dreams. I wonder of what she is dreaming. Your wives will all have dreams very soon, I told them, and none of them will be virtuous. None of them will be concerned for the husband who labors in the fields and the forests, and who tends cattle, and returns dutifully home to his children, and sits soberly on his hearth. On the contrary, they will be dreams which I hesitate to speak of, for women's minds are somewhat less decorous and guileless than men's, even on Pandora. The indelicacy of a woman's thoughts would bring a flame to the cheek of even the burliest man. You have observed that nature is not always delicate. It is true, said the lads, with a worry in their eyes which saddened me. And women are far closer to nature than are you, for all you labor in the fields and the forests. There is a certain earthiness in women which is sometimes an embarrassment to husbands, a certain lustiness of the flesh that is not always easily satisfied. If I am incorrect, I beg your forgiveness. You are correct, Lord, said the simple ones. Then indeed, alas, I said, for unto your wives there will be sent from the very depths of hell an evil, but most beautiful male demon. One Damon. I know him well. He has seduced endless millions of women on other planets, as fair and as matronly as your own, and as busy with dreams. He is full of novelties and enticements, and adores women and finds them overwhelmingly fascinating, which you not always do. Their conversation never wearies him. He is attentive and glorious. He is And as he never labors except to do mischief, he is not weary at sundown, as you are weary. As he is a demon and not a man, he does not sleep, and women are notable for being active at night and dreaming. He converses. You have no idea what a menace to husbands is a conversing man, but women find it distracting. You love your wives, soon they will bear children. However, when Damon comes to seduce them with fair words, with exciting discourse, with flatteries and ardencies, and will shine the beauty of his countenance upon them and jest with them until they are weak with laughter and adoration, they will forget you and your children, and will race with him to flowery dells and into dim lush spots, and will then betray you for his kisses and his lusts. Then will your children cry for maternal breast, and then will there be no dishes upon the table to appease your hungers, and no arms to sustain you in your beds. You will be veritable orphans, abandoned and alone, left to weep among the wreckages of your households, and the unclean pots and the stale bread. Is that not a fate to weep about and to pray never afflicts you? O Lord, they cried in despair, that is a fate worse than death. I had to confess, not entirely. Let us not be extravagant. Incidentally, Damon has a voice that is irresistible. And what woman can resist a musical voice if it is also masculine? Damon is all masculinity. He is never weary. His muscles never ache. His foot never lags. He never frowns. His dinner is a little late. I had to confess, not entirely. Let us not be extravagant. Incidentally, Damon has a voice that is irresistible, and what woman can resist a musical voice if it is also masculine? Damon is all masculinity. He is never weary. His muscles never ache. His foot never lags. He never frowns if dinner is a little late. He is also never hungry, as you are hungry, and you know how impatient wives are when, with the honest hunger of a man, they remark that men's bellies seem bottomless. Correct me if I am wrong. You are correct, Lord, they said, with dismalness and alarm. As Damon does not seek a woman with forthrightness and with sleep in mind thereafter as you do, he will dally with a woman after love until she is ready and eager for his embraces again, whereas you, my dear little ones, wish to turn on your pillows in preparation for the next day's work. Damon never asks, do you love me, as your wives ask until you yawn for very boredom. He constantly assures the creature of his immediate affection that never has he loved a woman so before, and how rapturous are her kisses and perfumed her flesh. Do you say all this to your wives? No, Lord, they said dolorously. You might practice it sometimes, I told them with affection. It will be somewhat hard to keep it in mind, but it is worth practice. After all, a lady must have her assurances also, and if her husband considers or pretends to consider her a flower among women, a gem above gems, she will lure him with daintier dishes and a more compliant behavior, even when he is abrupt. She will forgive him certain rudenesses of manner, for is he not the most magnificent of, well, poets? She will forbear to scold him for forgetfulnesses. She will seek his gratifications and comforts above all other matters, even children. His little weaknesses in themselves will make her believe they are lovable, and in the nature of men, which they are, of course. Have you been derelict, my brothers? I asked, detecting a flicker of sheepishness on their faces. We have not always been patient with the vagaries of women, one confessed. Be patient, for one comes who will have all the patience in the world and will never weary. Not only will he seduce your wives so that all the horrors I have described will come upon you, but he will bring old age and death to you, and flagging of strength, and disease and pain. Worse, he will sharpen your women's tongues, and nothing is more deadly. How can we escape such a dreadful fate? They cried. I hesitate, I said, being a male spirit of considerable compassion, to cast doubts into your minds, but let that man beware who has never doubted a woman, even his wife. Men are trustful when it involves women, and that is a momentous mystery which I will not even attempt to explore. I do not advise distrust as a general climate of the mind that can inspire eventual cynicism and lovelessness. But a reasonable distrust is prudent, and one knows the weaknesses of women, do we not? Certainly, they exclaimed, positive that they had always known female weaknesses, though the fact had only just occurred to them. Alas. Then be watchful for Damon. Never leave your wives long unguarded, especially in the soft eventides and when the moons are shining. Do not dally in the fields and the forests and the hills and the meadows as the sun begins to go down. Do not let anything draw you aside, even if it appears exciting and wondrous in you, and probably beautiful itself. For if you delay, Demon will appear on your thresholds at home, and you may return to an empty household. A moment's delight can cost you a whole life's industry and hope and peace, and again it will bring you death and suffering. Of course, one of the younger lads became curious. Of what nature is this wonder and delight you speak of, Lord, which could delay our return to our households? Ah, I said, it is but another shadow of evil. Let us not discuss it. You are men, you are strong, and you have your honor to guard in the shape of your wives. It is not sensible, as you know, Lucifer, to describe a handsome man to a woman or a lovely woman to a man, human nature being what it is, even on the Eden which is Pandora. We will guard our honor and the honor of our households and the safety of our children and the purity of our wives, shouted the innocent ones, raising their fists high in a solemn oath. Ever shall we be watchful of our women, understanding their weaknesses and their frail natures and their susceptibilities to temptation. I gave them my blessing and departed. They have been warned. Suspicion has been introduced into the turquoise delight and the silver and lilac nights. But was not fear of the forbidden tree introduced on Terra? Even in heaven, the dread of transgressing the law is with us, for we have free will. There are times, I am afraid, Lucifer, that I sympathize with your plaint that men were also given free will, but as they are of the essence of the Father, they could not in consistency have been denied. In heaven we are unequally perfect, in accordance with the ability to be perfect inherent in our natures. And that brings me to another subject you discussed in your last letter, equality, which pervades in hell. In heaven there is equity, which is an entirely different matter. The laws of men are harsh and inflexible, especially those on the fallen planets. The same crime brings the same punishment, allegedly to all men, though I have noticed that it depends on the influence or the treasure the accused man possesses in entirely too many instances, or whether his appearance is or is not pleasing to a jury of his peers. A word that strikes ill on my ear, because no man has peers. But I digress. The same situation prevails in hell. Equality of treatment, no matter the soul. However, in heaven, as I have mentioned, there is equity based on the natural law that some men are superior to others and some angels less than others in virtue, in devotion, in piety, in dedication, love, and courage, and goodness. Equity does not abolish law, it intelligently deals with it and its inflexibility. Therefore, spirits in heaven, angel or man, are rewarded in direct ratio to their accomplishments, which are governed by their will. Man, as we know, cannot earn merit during his lifetime on the grosser material of the planets, unless he has not fallen. But fallen men are incapable of earning merit, for their sin has thrown a wall of human impotence between them and their Creator. Only the grace of our Father can give merit to fallen men, and that merit is given by the men's own acts through their faith and their desire to receive grace, through their repentance and their penance, through their acceptance of grace itself. You know this. It is a matter which has enraged you enough through time, so I beg your forgiveness for boring you. The saved among men who desire to be saved and therefore had placed themselves in a position to receive grace differ enormously in the degree of their natures and their virtues, as well as in their wills and their sins. A murderer in hell and a wanton thief are treated equally with the pains and the uselessness of existence, but in heaven a saint is worthier than a man of merely mild virtues, for the saint has labored long and hard in the stony fields of his life and has loved God more than himself and the lives of his fellow sufferers more than his own. A man who has valiantly struggled with temptation during his lifetime and has contemplated all the worldly delights you have offered him, Lucifer, and has even desperately yearned for them, but who has gloriously resisted you in his soul and in his living, is worthier of more reward in heaven than a man who has been merely mildly tempted by you, or through some accident has not been much tempted at all, or lacked the terrible vitality to sin, or was afraid of the consequences on his own world. The first man is a hero. The second man is one who has had little opportunity to be either a hero or a sinner. Our Father takes note of the human weaknesses of his creatures. He will not permit you to tempt a man beyond his total ability to resist. But he does permit you to tempt his saints more fiercely and more insistently because they are men of greater valor and nobler mind. Our Father, as we have observed before, does not create men equal, but he has established equity based on the natural law which he ordained himself. There is no injustice in him whom we love so passionately, and you have never denied your love, nor can you destroy it. And so when we read that all men are created equal by our Creator in the Declaration of Independence, we understand that it is this equity, this equality of opportunity and striving. Just wanted to make that note there. Were you the ruler of heaven, the saint and the weaker man would receive equal reward, but that is manifestly unfair. Archangels, who have vaster powers than angels, are more in possession of free will, and therefore the temptation to use that will in defiance of God is infinitely higher in degree than in the lesser angels. Archangels are given enormous responsibilities and thrones and crowns throughout the endless universes because of their nature, and it is they who see the beatific vision more frequently than the lesser spirits and the spirits of men. To each according to his merits is the law of heaven, whereas on Terra and other darkened worlds there appears to be some mangling of the moral law to the effect, to each according to his material needs. And that, we know, is infamy, injustice, cruelty, and a display of malice to the more worthy. Greed is the ugliest of the detestable sins, for it feeds on its own appetite and is never filled, and its rapacity is increased by its rapaciousness. It gives rise to the other sins, envy, theft, sloth, lies, adulteries, and murder, and gluttony. There is happiness in heaven, as you know, but that happiness is in degree, except for the knowing that God loves completely to the extent of an angel's or man's worth. That happiness is compounded by labor, for none are idle in heaven, and there is a task for all. That, too, is equity. While each task is approached with joy and with the hope, but never the absolute surety that it will be completed, its completion, when accomplished, leads to higher tasks, worthy of a tempered spirit. There is always a progression in the hierarchy of heaven. No spirit remains as it was. And always there is a possibility, constantly reiterated, that as the spirit retains its free will, it can will to sin. This is something the theologians, in their little darkness on their worlds, have never understood or acknowledged, that there is always the hazard that a spirit may fall to you, even in the golden light of heaven. For God does not remove free will from his creatures, no matter their degree. If he did so, he would abrogate their individuality, their very existence. both of which are eternally precious to him, for they are of his own nature and essence. Enough, you know all these matters. You have asked me if God pursues the lost soul in the hells. That I cannot and will not tell you. Is it possible for the lost to feel repentance? You have said not. But do you know all minds? I am not taunting you, Lucifer, and that you know. Your brother, Michael. And so what Michael is referring to here, inferring, is that souls in the astral plane, souls in hell, can be rescued and turned to the light, and are rescued by our prayers and our calls, and by their own change of heart and striving. It's not in every case, but it happens, and it happens enough. As we read this, can we not see again the beauty and love of God, and desire that love, desire to be one again with the Father, who loves us so, and who we have so sorely missed in our consciousness of separation, to be able to go to the highest heights of heaven and to maintain that love bond through free will, and to forever forsake all disobedience, all defiance, and the entire rebellion. That is our prayer. Thank you for joining us for this release on the dialogues with the devil. Thank you. God bless.